Hey, welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Yvonne, a show for creatives and entrepreneurs. I'm Yvonne Pearson, your host, and darling, the founder of Pink Dollhouse Marketing. And I know you're probably wondering, is that a dog? Yes, it is a dog. Yes, it is a dog. This is my puppy, my 10-month-old puppy, Saint Laurent Langston Pearson. And normally when I record the show, you guys, he's a good boy. He normally just sits right next to my workstation where I record the pod. And he's quiet, but he just wanted to sit up here for today. So we're just going to change things up. Normally I have my pink mug that you see in the background for the show, but today I have my dog with me. So Saint is going to join this week's Marketing Magic. And because we go with the flow around here, let's go ahead and get into these topics that we're going to talk about. If you're new here, Marketing Magic is when I dive into topics that you normally see on your timeline while you're scrolling and go into the marketing elements and tactics behind them. On today's show, Saint, do you want to read out the topics for today's show? You can't read? We'll work on that. On today's show, we're going to talk about when uniforms become cultural archives, when morning routines become marketing, how the ordinary turns utility into influence, and how Cowboy Carter, yes, we're going to talk about Beyonce! How Cowboy Carter became academic infrastructure. So grab your coffee or your dog or any pet that you have and let's chat. All right, let's chat, Sainty. Come on, buddy. We're going to go into the first topic. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. Oh, okay. So you just decided, you already quitting podcasting, huh? You lasted a lot longer than a lot of folks who started a podcast. All right. In our first story, when uniforms become cultural archives, I got this from the Washington Mystics press room, and the Washington Mystics, in collaboration with Nike and the WNBA, have unveiled the new WNBA Nike Rebel Edition uniform. The uniform pays tribute to Washington, D.C.'s U Street and its Black Broadway era for the 1920s to 1950s, as well as the women entrepreneurs and entertainers who sustained the corridor through times of adversity. From the 1920s to 1950s, U Street was one of America's most vibrant cultural and economic hubs for Black Americans and became an important symbol during the Civil Rights Movement. Known as Black Broadway, the neighborhood was lined with jazz clubs, theaters, civil organizations, and restaurants. Also, if you see me looking down at my screen where Saint is looking right now, it's because I bring notes to the conversation to make sure we're having an engaged and informed chat. So let's first get into those marketing takeaways. And if you're new here, marketing takeaways are basically 3 different areas that we focus on concerning the article that we discuss and the marketing tactics behind the campaign. Marketing takeaway number 1. Culture as a uniform. When apparel becomes a storytelling medium, the Mystics aren't just dropping a jersey, they're dropping a cultural artifact. The 2026 Rebel Edition is rooted in U Street's Black Broadway era, honoring the women who sustained the corridor through adversity. This is an apparel at... Yes, buddy. I'm doing the podcast. We talked about this. I let you sit up here to join me as my co-producer, okay? Can I finish the pod? Okay, thank you very much. Apologies for that. He wanted to have a little input on what we're talking about today. So this apparel is a place-based storytelling where the uniform becomes wearable archive as part of Black cultural history. And more so too, understanding that how DC has changed over recent years, it is so important to maintain that history of who the core of the DC area is. Mentioning Black Broadway, a lot of people don't realize that U Street's corridor was the predecessor to the Harlem Renaissance. A lot of the famous people we talk about from today, like the Duke Ellingtons of the world, the Langston Hughes, all of them have had a presence within the DC culture that was part of Black Broadway. And making sure that we recognize that as DC continues to change and that erasure is continuing to happen is so important in maintaining not just our DC roots, but our cultural roots as well. When we go into marketing takeaway number 2, let's talk about heritage marketing is moving from symbolic to specific. Instead of a vague heritage nods, the jersey pulls directly from the iconic U Street businesses like Ben's Chili Bowl. Everybody know Ben's Chili Bowl. For real tea, Ben's next door to Wings. Have you ever tried their mambo sauce wings? They pretty good. And before the pandemic, they had a really good happy hour. Like an actual happy hour, not what they call a happy hour now, because $10 for a drink, excuse me. No, ma'am. But Ben's Chili Bowl has been a staple within the community for decades. You've had past presidents there. Obama has been over there. You've had celebrities that have passed through during Howard's homecoming to pay homage to what Ben's Chili Bowl has meant to them when they were at Howard University up the street. When brands win, when they anchor their identity in real, local, and lived history, not just cultural references, it comes across as authentic. It comes across as recognizing who built the city and who continues to build the city despite the number of changes that have been made. Let's talk about the final takeaway. That's women in sports that are leading the way in community-rooted branding. The WNBA continues to outperform in cultural relevance because of teams like the Mystics who build uniforms around community, resilience, and legacy, not just performance. This is a masterclass in values-driven brand building where a product is inseparable from the people it represents. And also to further build that out, the WNBA has had such a, I want to call it a resurgence. I would say finally that they're getting their recognition, right? In recent years, you had people like Ellie the Elephant, the mascot with the long ponytail. Ellie be serving the girls. But you have Ellie the Elephant that really helped the New York Liberty get more social recognition and more pop cultural recognition. You have people like Angel Reese, who's coming to the fold, Caitlin Clark, who's coming to the fold and brought their fandom from the social media bases when they were in college over to the professional industry. And then you have celebrities who have tapped into the WNBA. You have Kev on stage, who has stood 10 toes down behind the WNBA and have been avid supporters of that. You also have people like Shaquille O'Neal, who worked with Angel Reese to get her first sneaker deal with Reebok when they were going through a resurgence. And he made an investment in Angel Reese early, along with other women in sports. So the WNBA is seeing a move and a tick upward in terms of mobility and visibility. The NBA has been carrying it for so long, but to be honest, the women talent on the court is just as good as the men, but have not seen the same in endorsement deals and pay, which is something that they've also been fighting against, but seeing that same equability on the court to make sure that they're being financially supported. This building allows for people to not only get behind the WNBA, but start to collect memorabilia around these teams that will continue to build that fandom over time. And for that marketing lesson, authenticity isn't just an aesthetic, it's an archive. Brands that embed real history into their storytelling create emotional resonance that can't be manufactured. In our next story, let's talk about when morning routines become marketing. So I got this from Starbucks, aka Starbies, aka my coffee problem. I really do have a coffee problem. I want to blame this, though, on my uncle, my mama's best friend's husband, Uncle Fred. He did give me my first cup of coffee when I was 8. Now, to my mama credit, she didn't want me to have that coffee because I was too young. But my Uncle Fred, he a countryman, it wasn't a big deal to him. Children are fine. Had my first cup of coffee at 8, did not turn back. Starbucks, pulling an excerpt from the source, Starbucks coffee and protein is giving mornings a boost with the launch of their Starbucks weighted vest, designed in partnership with Kalana Barfield Brown, founder of fashion and lifestyle brand KBB by Kalana. People are looking to simplify their morning routines, not complicate them, said Brian Smith, Senior Director, Brand Marketing, North America Coffee Partnerships for Starbucks. This partnership is about making the most of familiar morning habits. Pairing RTD, Starbucks coffee and protein with the Starbucks weighted vest helps our customers be more intentional about how they start their day. So let's get into those marketing takeaways. Let's first talk about functional wellness is becoming a lifestyle ecosystem. Starbucks isn't just launching a drink, they're launching a morning routine system, a protein-powered beverage, a limited edition weighted vest, a challenge tied to 22 minutes of movement, mirroring 22 grams of protein. This is beverage marketing evolving into habit formation marketing. Also considering, too, right now, protein is the biggest trend in the foodie space. Trends do change very often when it comes to food. I think matcha is a huge thing. It's still having a moment. But protein has moved into the market as the next wave in the foodie space. You see protein included everywhere, from your beverages to your food to like breakfast items like we're talking here. The fact that marketing in Starbucks is taking advantage of that also by tying it to someone that is recognized in the fashion community with Kalana Barfo Brown is very smart too. By tying those two things together, you're putting together things that you had never thought about in that space. A weighted vest with a protein drink. Now we're tying it into like a wellness lifestyle, which allows them to build an additional branch within the beverage category space underneath the Starbucks umbrella. In that second marketing takeaway, let's talk about merch is now a behavior shaping tool, not a collectible. The weighted vest isn't swag. It's a physical cue designed to reinforce the product's value proposition. It turns the drink's functional benefit protein into a tangible ritual that consumers can wear, feel, and share. And then also too, it gets into that wellness space. So not only are you getting people who want to buy the protein drink, now they're tying it into their wellness workout routine and behavior. So Starbucks isn't just getting people to buy this protein drink, they're also getting them to wear something while they're out, which builds bigger brand visibility for Starbucks and this protein line. And in our final marketing takeaway, let's talk about gamified movement is a new loyalty program. The challenge reframes loyalty as participation and not purchase. By tying rewards to consistent movement, Starbucks taps into embedding the product into daily life. For that marketing lesson, the future of brand loyalty is routine ownership. Brands that shape how consumers move, sip, and start their day will own the most valuable real estate, the morning. In our next story, let's talk about The Ordinary, who's actually one of the beauty sponsors that was at my Devil Wears Prada 2 event. Thank you again to my sis Bianca for the hookup. But how The Ordinary turns utility into influence. So to pull an excerpt from the source, as with all marketing stunts, the goal is likely to generate as much buzz as possible. The Ordinary's Vice President of Brand Marketing, Amy Bai, told Business of Fashion, which is also a great source, by the way, and they have a really great podcast called The Debrief, that while the reward we get from people sharing pop-ups of ours is such a wonderful added bonus, it's really about a visitor walking away with the right message. The shuttle that they launched aims to replace a 50-plus minute subway route that requires going into Manhattan with a no-stop north-south corridor that is open to everyone and completely free, according to its website. It's a transportation pain point which many Brooklyn residents are well acquainted. It also gives free skincare products away to the first 100 shuttle riders each day. So let's get into those marketing takeaways. Let's talk about first solving a real pain point is a new flex. The Ordinary's free shuttle cuts a 50-plus minute subway detour into a direct route between Domino Park and Prospect Park. By addressing a real NYC transit frustration, the brand turns urban inconvenience into cultural capital. And this is also smart too, because think about it. You're in New York, you're in Brooklyn, you're getting your morning bagel, and your coffee or something like that. And you see this Ordinary bus rolling up and down the street, taking people throughout the day on a shuttle. That gives visibility to people who may not be aware of the actual brand. Now they're going, who's The Ordinary? What is that? They're Googling, they're searching, they're maybe scanning a QR code that could be on the bus. And then if they decided, by giving out those 100 free products, now you're getting people to create content around that free product. That's free press. That's goodwill that's built within the community, knowing that they're taking care of their customers and listening to their pain points and concerns. Yes, buddy. You agree with my assessment of The Ordinary? Thank you very much. You're a very talented marketer too. You do great TikToks. In that second marketing takeaway, let's talk about access as brand identity, not just product positioning. The Ordinary has always been about accessibility in skincare. This stunt extends to the ethos in physical mobility. If access is your brand promise, every touch point should reflect it. The bus becomes a literal manifestation of the brand's mission. And if you haven't seen their pop-ups or activations before, The Ordinary does a great job of storytelling, of simplifying their language to make it easy for everyone to understand. They did a Ordinary periodic table, which was really dope, about ingredients. They also did one about an Ordinary dictionary that was really cool. I love that too. They did one which was like a chemistry is in everything wall, showing things from a banana to a worn sock, how chemistry is in every single touch point of our lives. It makes it so simple for people to understand and removes the myth around topics like science that can create confusion for people who may be scared to talk about science because they're unaware of how it impacts their daily life, or there's negative connotation around science in general. In our last marketing takeaway, let's talk about experiential usefulness outperforms experiential spectacle. Unlike typical pop-ups, this activation is useful. People don't just see the campaign, they write it. This transforms the city into a moving canvas and creates a deeper memory, encoding the passiveness of advertising ever could. And more importantly, it's because things like, marketing nowadays, I say this all the time, it takes multiple prongs to move the needle, right? Social media is great. An ad in a newspaper, yes, people still read newspapers, is great. Doing a digital ad is great. Activations are great. But how are you moving the needle forward? Are you just using one channel, or are you using multiple to tell your story? And what The Ordinary does well is they use multiple channels simultaneously. They don't just rely on customer engagement through their social media platforms or word of mouth marketing, which is still one of the stronger platforms, in my opinion, in terms of amplifying awareness, but they use every single lever to move the needle and to drive sales. That's why The Ordinary has been successful. They understand what their customers want. They're actively listening through that social language and those social platforms to make sure that they're meeting their customers' needs. They understand that their customers don't have to shop with them. They understand that there are brands very similar to The Ordinary that could take a piece of their market share. But what makes them different is they're tapped in, and they're always tapped in. And by tapping in and adapting to what their customer needs are, they're always going to be successful and able to convert those fans into actual paying customers, and also increase the customer lifetime value. So for that marketing lesson, the strongest brand experiences don't entertain, they intervene. When a brand steps into a real world problem and offers a functional workaround, it earns cultural relevance that money can't buy. And in our final story, let's talk about Beyonce. Beyonce. Hi, I love you. Can I get Act 3, please? Because I have an outfit in my mind, but until you release it, I can't start putting things together. But I'll be patient, though. I'll be patient. But can you get on it? Because I would like to go to another tour. Still one of the best tours I've ever been to. I would like to go to another tour. So I got this from Afrotech, and it talks about a new course at Harvard University that centers the Cowboy Carter album and government affairs. According to the Harvard Gazette, a course titled American Requiem and Big Ideas. I really like that song. But anyway, the Harvard Gazette, a course titled American Requiem, Beyonce Benefits and the Gap Between Promise and Delivery, is being taught by, and I may get your name wrong, my apologies, Ashi Roy, an adjunct lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School. The course uses the Grammy-winning album to explore the digital technology and how to leverage it to improve government services. She frames the album as a conversation about the erasure of African-American people from country music, said Roy, per the Harvard Gazette. You realize that she's actually making a commentary about Black erasure from the country, the body politic, not the country as a genre of music, and that really inspired me. My hope is that I help the next generation of policymakers think more expansively about the kinds of input that define good policy. So let's get into those marketing takeaways. Let's talk about first when cultural commentary becomes curriculum. Harvard's new course uses Cowboy Carter to examine the erasure of Black artists in country music and the parallel erasure of marginalized people in public policy. This is a culture functioning as Beyonce's storytelling becomes a framework for understanding systematic gaps in government, like services like Medicaid and SNAP. Also, pop culture isn't just influencing a conversation, it's influencing institutions. And also, too, people forget that Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, which won Album of the Year finally, she should have won for Lemonade, but we're going to let that go. But when you listen to the album, the professor is right. There's so much storytelling that goes into Cowboy Carter that goes deeper into music. That erasure is very real. We talked about it at the top of the episode discussing the U Street influence for the Mystic uniform and how the Black storytelling or Black history is being erased throughout the city with gentrification and also policies around inclusion and belonging. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter album addresses that erasure through country music. Country music was created by Black people. Country music, it has the roots of African culture and storytelling and things like that. But when you look at country music in a modern lens, you barely see Black artists amplified to the stage and platforms of others. You have people who have crossed over into country music who were in hip hop or in pop and welcomed with open arms because they were not Black. Post Malone, I'm looking at you. You have people who were allowed into that space. That was a space that was originally created to tell our stories from our hardships and our experiences. Country music is a Black experience, is a Black culture in terms of the prong of what we have here in America and what we have built. And thinking about it in terms of a government focus course, it is very interesting to tie those two things together. I would have never thought of connecting those dots, but bringing those two together will help people see it from a broader perspective and also see the impact that music can have in overall storytelling and the impact on people's lives. In that second marketing takeaway, let's talk about how Beyonce becomes a framework for understanding systematic design. Instead of treating Cowboy Carter as a pop culture phenomenon, Harvard is using it as a design lens to examine how systems fail the people they are meant to serve. The lecturer connects the album's theme, that erasure, identity, lineage, reclamation, to real policy breakdowns in Medicaid and SNAP, as well as child welfare. This is Beyonce functioning as methodology, a cultural text that helps future policymakers see the human impact behind those decisions. And more importantly, art isn't just reflecting its society, it is teaching people how to rebuild it. Art itself is an act of defiance if done correctly. Art is a way of protesting systems that are in place and being able to, in a way of creativity, tell a story or amplify a message to a broader audience through that medium. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, through this course, is addressing that as well, about that erasure and about those policies that impact people, not just Black Americans, but people across the board who utilize those programs and those assistive things to help them stay afloat and get ahead. You know, poverty within the United States is very real. You have people who are the working poor, people who go to work every single day but still come short in terms of buying things like food, paying their bills, etc. It does not make them lazy. It does not make them less harder working Americans than the typical average person. It means that the system is broken. The system itself is broken and that people need help. And understanding where we are right now, where we see things happening in broader spaces and you see money repositioned into other things that are not helping everyday people, you see how that impact has ripple affected across the board. Fortunately, being here in the DC area, economic mobility is very possible here, but there is poverty in this area too. You have the working poor here as well, especially with gentrification and people getting priced out of their homes and their communities. That is a reality that a lot of folks are dealing with around here and in this country. And using that album to tell that story, to talk about how these policies have a ripple effect down the line to future policymakers, is a smart move. And in that final marketing takeaway, let's talk about how institutions are turning to artists to explain America. Touching a bit more on what I said in the previous marketing takeaway, this course positions Beyonce as a cultural theorist whose work helps decode race, representation, and the American body politic. Harvard joins a growing list of universities using artists as intellectual frameworks for understanding society. This reflects a broader trend. Artists with strong cultural point of views are becoming academic infrastructure. And like they say, art imitates life. And also now, too, that you see Gen Z and Gen Alpha in more of these spaces of, becoming adults or, starting to get interested more and more in politics, whether positive or negative, it's important that they have information that they can relate to. No longer can you just open up a book and point to a historical figure and hope that they have a connection with that person. With these kids who grew up on social media, you have to make it relevant and interesting to them. Otherwise, it's going to fall by the wayside and they're not going to pay attention to that. You need them to be able to relate to what people are discussing. If it is Beyonce, if it is someone like a Kendrick Lamar or people who had impact in various spaces, it's good to make sure that, I know who Beyonce is. I've heard Cowboy Carter, but I never thought about those albums that way before. For that marketing lesson, culture becomes power when institutions adopt to it. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter isn't just an album, it's now a teaching tool shaping how future policymakers think about equity, representation, and implementation. When your work reflects real people's lived experiences, it transcends entertainment and becomes influence. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's chat, and my co-producer, who I think is asleep now. I know you're not sleeping on the job after all that huffing and puffing you done did to get up here, but I hope you enjoyed today's chat. Please note that Coffee with Yvonne will be going on its summer hiatus ahead of next season, season 8. Yes, we've been around for 8 seasons, y'all. Clock it. But ahead of next season, so we have a few more episodes to go before that hiatus. But do not worry, you will have your Coffee to Go episodes. I've already pulled them. I've already selected which ones made the cut from our Coffee with Yvonne archive. We have an archive, y'all, to enjoy the entire time I'm out on summer hiatus. To learn more about Coffee with Yvonne, go ahead and go to Instagram and Threads and visit at Coffee with Yvonne on social media. To learn more about me and my business, Pink Dollhouse Marketing, you can go to pinkdollhousemarketing.com or you can go to Pink Dollhouse Marketing on Instagram. You can slide into my DMs. That's cool. And where you can see me on my personal account on Instagram and TikTok, aka the Clock Out, where I be cutting up who I am on my day-to-day life. I'm a cool person too, by the way, so go ahead and follow me. You can find me at Yvonne_creative marketer. And creatives, I'm going to keep saying this to you every single week until you get it. Don't forget to keep showing up, keep creating, and that your voices matter. I cannot wait to chat with you soon on another episode of Coffee with Yvonne. You want to say the bye, Saint? You want to say, okay, bye? No? You just want your dinner, don't you? All right. I'm going to feed the dog. Okay, bye! Say bye, Saint. Nothing. Okay. Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Dollhouse Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.